Otherwise, you're going to go from a house that looks like this to a house looking like this. The choice is yours. Make sure you support the people out there who are looking for your kids' futures. From housing supply and benchmark shifts to pipelines, LNG, and a national strategy, this month's Hazy Crystal Ball connects the dots between your home's value and Canada's place in the rapidly shifting world. Well, February saw a continuation of what I reported last month, where market conditions varied by property type. The conditions were tightest around the detached and attached homes, where demand continues to remain really strong. Meanwhile, apartment-style properties, primarily condominiums obviously, continue to deal with excess supply and conditions that still favoring the buyer. So now's the time to be buying if you want to buy a condo. Slowing migration levels coinciding with rising supply for apartment-style homes have caused this situation. Calgary reported record-high housing starts last year, mostly due to apartment starts where there are nearly 18,000 units that are currently under construction, plus all the ones that were under construction last year. So while a large share of these units are targeted for rentals, this directly impacts the condo ownership marketplaces. So as an example, I own a number of units downtown Calgary. All the new units getting built in the inner core as well as outside of downtown core will affect my rentability. In fact, this year, the market rents on my units have dropped anywhere between 10 to 15% simply because of that additional supply. Conversely, the detached marketplace remains relatively balanced in the higher price ranges, but continues to struggle with limited supply for homes priced below $700,000. Inventory reached 4,800 units in February, with condominiums and row homes representing more than half of all the inventory. That's virtually unprecedented. There are just over 1,500 sales across all housing types in February, an 11% decline over last year, mostly due to the sharp pullback in both row and apartment sales. Detached homes had a February benchmark price of just over $734,000, which is a marginal 1% higher than what we saw in January, but that's still 3% lower than what we saw last year. Attached homes have a benchmark price of $682,000, which is 2% higher than last month and similar to last year numbers. Apartment condo benchmark prices continue to have a substantial pullback at just under $299,000. That's basically identical to January, but also 9% lower than what we saw last year. I remember distinctly last year, we had an extended period where the benchmark price for condos, apartment-style condos, was $333,000. So that's a massive drop, as I just mentioned, 9%. Available inventory for apartment condos ranges from 11 months in the northeast sector to just under 4 months in the south. So depending on where you're looking at, you can have tremendous choice, or alternately something that's more or less a balanced marketplace. Looking at Airdrie, their benchmark price is $512, similar to January, but still 5% lower than last year. Cochrane is at $553,000, slightly higher than January, but again, still 3% below last February. Okotoks is at $612 as a benchmark price, a 2% gain over January, and similar to last year's numbers. Now, given current issues that we have in Iran and also in Venezuela, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? We don't see any major impact on Calgary and area housing prices. However, let's look at why this is happening and the impact. Every dollar increase in the oil price equates to $20 million more revenue for the province of Alberta, thus decreasing our projected 2026 deficit. So if you do a quick calculation, as of yesterday, oil was trading roughly $10 higher than the projection that the Alberta government had for the 2026 budget. So therefore, $20 million for every dollar. Calculate that on a daily basis. We're $10 higher. All we need is 50 days of oil being priced roughly where it is, or even a little something larger, so that our 2026 budget is balanced. That's incredible. Now you got to ask yourself, okay, why the heck is this conflict going on? Well, myself, if you look at it, basically Venezuela and Iran were invaded by an orange-haired leader that we have down south. Why? I think that Trump wants to drastically reduce the oil volumes being sent to China. If you do the calculations, China, basically, what is it? I think it's something like this is Venezuela. Venezuela sends 68% of all their annual oil production to China. By the way, 23% goes to the U.S. from Venezuela. Meanwhile, Iran, 90% of their annual oil production goes to China. As recently as 2017, only 25% of it went to China. So why in the world is all this important? The media states that it's drug cartels, nuclear bombs, dictators, and all that stuff. That's the primary reason for the U.S. attacking these countries. Bottom line, I disagree. I think it's Trump's attempt, recognizing that the era of the U.S. being a dominant world economic nation or force is over, and China's the next superpower. And so basically by constraining their oil imports, primarily from Venezuela and Iran, this will basically really reduce their economic viability and basically have them struggle. Now, that's one of the reasons why Carney went over there I think it was last month, and basically started having some deals to ship oil over there. Now, I want to say over there to China. So bottom line, what this all points to is Canada has massive oil reserves. In fact, it's something like $121 trillion in Alberta's ground. This is another case to support what I call a Canadian energy corridor, building pipelines to both coasts, all three coasts, including up in Churchill Bay in northern Manitoba. So therefore, we'd have enough energy for ourselves as a country, as well as be able to export to many other countries as opposed to just the USA. Anyways, that's just my intake on all this stuff. It's going to be interesting to see what the federal government does, because basically I find, be it provincial governments or federal governments, they tend to be reactive as opposed to proactive. But here's an opportunity for our leadership in both the provincial, right across every province across the country, as well as our federal government and opposition leaders, to get together and do something proper to get things done. Otherwise, you're going to go from a house that looks like this to a house looking like this. The choice is yours. Make sure you support the people out there who are looking for your kids' futures. See you next month.